Yeah, you can.
Okay, so welcome everyone to lesson 22 for Education for Nepal English Group. This is our YouTube channel for past lesson recordings. You can click on that link to watch any previous videos. So this is our first icebreaker. What is your favorite element? Feel free to type in the chat or say it out loud.
My favorite element is hydrogen.
Can you repeat that?
My favorite element is hydrogen.
Hydrogen? Yeah, hydrogen is the weirdest element and a really flammable one. At least it's weird in terms of placement on the periodic table. So in the chat, somebody saying sodium, somebody saying gold. Okay, I can easily understand gold, but why sodium? Oxygen. Any reason for picking sodium? No, you just like sodium? That's fine. Sodium combined with chlorine can make salt, which is what you normally put on your food. Okay, next icebreaker. What's your favorite summer activity?
Swimming.
Swimming, yeah. Personally, I'm not a big fan of swimming, but swimming is pretty fun. Any other people have summer activities they like doing? No? Okay. So today we're going to start off with chemistry. And then Catherine, you said we're doing math first before our history, right?
It's okay. You can do chemistry now.
No, I'm saying
Yeah,
we're doing
math before
history last.
history. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is a bit inaccurate, but we're doing chemistry and then math and then history. So our first topic is going to be chemistry, and then we're going to be teaching you some history on chemistry. We're going to be teaching about some famous chemists and what they did.
All right. So first thing, I guess, would be the scientific revolution. It occurred from the 16th to 18th centuries and marked a pivotal period in the development of modern chemistry. There were prominent figures like Robert Boyle and Antoine Lavoisier, who began to emphasize experimentation and observation rather than relying solely on philosophical or mystical ideas, which was what chemistry was before this time. Boyle's work on the relationship between pressure and volume in gases led to the formation of Boyle's law, while Lavoisier was considered the father of modern chemistry for his discoveries in chemical elements and the development of the theory of combustion. And he was also responsible for rediscovering and proving the law of conservation of mass. So I got some questions about the scientific revolution. So when did the scientific revolution occur? And anyone can answer, you can just speak up and say it.
Repeating the question is, when did the scientific revolution occur?
From 16th to 18th century.
Correct. Yep. We also have Catherine putting it in the chat.
Okay, next question is, who created Boyle's law?
Robert Boyle.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, Bishal is doing a great job, but we also encourage other people to also participate. So yeah, feel free to also speak in the chat because it can help you improve your English skills.
And then for our last question, it is, what is Antoine Lavoisier known for creating?
Is known as is known for proving the law of conservation of mass.
Yep, and also for his discoveries in chemical elements and the theory of combustion.
Okay, so on to some more famous chemists. Probably one of the most famous chemists of all time, Mendeleev. So Dmitry Mendeleev, he was like a Russian chemist or scientist, and he's known for creating the first periodic table. So he didn't exactly create the one that you see today, but he's known for like creating the first one. So he made it back in 1869, and back then there was only 63 known elements. Currently, I think there's around 100 plus elements. I forgot exactly how many. But yeah, at that time there was only 63 known elements, but he knew that more elements would be discovered in the future. So if you actually take a look at the first periodic table, he left some gaps in between because he knew those elements would be discovered in the future. And back then in 1869, they didn't quite know that much about atoms yet. So he organized the elements based on atomic weight. And if you know something about chemistry, you would know that nowadays atoms are arranged based on their atomic number, which is how much protons they have. And they're no longer arranged by atomic weight because there's some elements that have more protons but are lighter than the elements with less protons right before it. So another famous scientist is John Dalton. He was an English chemist who introduced his atomic theory. And the theory has four parts. The first part states that all matter is made of atoms, which are indivisible. So this first part is like half true, half not. So his theory isn't 100% correct because to be fair, he made it like a long time ago and he didn't have the technology that we have today. So most of his theory is true, but not all of it. So yes, everything is made of atoms, but now we have technology that allows us to like break atoms apart, and we've discovered things like quarks and stuff, which is what atoms are made of, I guess. The second part of his theory is that all atoms of a given element are identical. This statement is completely false because later on we discovered something called isotopes, which is just you have the same element, but that element has different numbers of neutrons. So therefore you have oxygen, right? Well, you can have oxygen having 16 atomic weight, but you can also have oxygen having 17 atomic weight because the oxygen that's heavier just has more neutrons. So now we know that atoms of a given element are not identical. They can they can like deviate in terms of their weight. Now the third part states that compounds are combinations of two or more elements. Now that's completely true. Usually if you have two or more elements like that reacted and made one thing, it's usually called a compound. And the last part states that chemical reaction is a rearrangement of atoms, which is also true because if you think about it, if you have a reaction where you melt ice or something into water, now your atoms are going from a solid form where like all the atoms are locked together into more like a liquid form where they could like move because like liquid doesn't have a definite volume. Next, there's a scientist named J.J. Thomson. He was a British chemist who discovered the electrons. So the electrons were actually the first subatomic particle to be discovered, and he used a cathode ray tube, which is like this like not super big, but like pretty big tube. And then he used that in his experiment to discover electrons. There's a picture of him on the right. So this is the guy who discovered the nucleus. His name is Rutherford. He's a chemist from New Zealand. And how he discovered the nucleus is he had a piece of gold foil, like a thin piece, I think. And then he launched some atoms at the gold foil, and like the nucleus would like hit it and like bounce off or something like that, I think. And that's how he discovered the nucleus. So the last scientist is Bohr. Bohr is really famous for creating the modern model for the atom. If you ever take a chemistry course, you probably seen the picture right here on the bottom left, because this is like the standard model that people use for teaching how what atoms look like to other people, I guess. So Bohr created this model. Now, realistically, this model is not 100% accurate. The most accurate model we have right now is called like the electron cloud model, but that's hard to teach to like middle schoolers and high schoolers. So teachers just go by this Bohr model because it's the easiest and relatively most accurate model to use. And then there's Bohr on the right. So we have some more questions. Who was the original publisher of the periodic table? Or like who created the? Yes, that's correct. Dmitry Mendeleev created the first periodic table. Now, how were the elements organized on that table?
On the basis of their atomic weight.
Yes, that's correct. They are arranged on atomic weight, as opposed to now where they're arranged by atomic number. And then last question is, what did Henry Moseley's work lead to? Now, this might be a bit hard because this was in the very beginning. Wait, actually, no, sorry. I kind of delete that slide because it's repetitive. Never mind, forget that question. Okay, that's the end of chemistry. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat or say it out loud. Or else we're going to be moving on to history, I believe, because Charles is actually here. Surprising.
Okay, Alan, do you want to start or should I just go ahead?
I'll start.
Okay.
All right, so we'll be covering immigration issues. Well, we'll be covering Reconstruction era, and then immigration, then Plessy versus Ferguson, which is kind of a little intertwined with the immigration, but not really. And then lastly, Spanish American.
Okay, I just have one quick thing to say. It's just not required. And I haven't asked this before, but I also encourage other teachers to turn on their cameras too.
Oh,
Or more participation. But if you don't want to, it's perfectly fine. But
I'll do that next time. All right, so post-Civil War, so the era following the Civil War era is the Reconstruction era. The basic goal of Reconstruction was to bring the South, which seceded from the Union, back in, and like, yeah. And then this plan was led by the Radical Republicans, which were a faction within the Republican Party that were committed to emancipation and giving equal rights to freed slaves. And they did this through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which abolished slavery, gave equal rights to former slaves, and made it illegal to ban voting based on race. This one of the results of this was the first state-funded public school in the South, more equal taxation, as well as laws against discrimination in public transport. You'll see in the next slide that they didn't really work. All right, so construction failed because of, I just listed 3 reasons here. One was because the Ku Klux Klan appeared and they started attacking the radical Republicans, as well as other African Americans who challenged white authority or tried to gain rights. which like made everyone scared. So they were more subtle, or they didn't want to get like lynched. Or the Supreme Court also limited Reconstruction. One of the ways that they did it was declaring that the 14th Amendment, or the Congress could not give equal protection under the law, and instead gave that power to state and local governments. And because the South was still really racist, they made the Jim Crow laws, or black codes, which made it really difficult for Black Americans to gain the right to vote, and also let them be put under a pseudo indentured servitude, and just generally made their life worse.
Oh, and if you guys don't know what lynching is, it's basically hanging someone. Like they would just like hang someone to a tree.
All right. So basically, like at around the same time, because like slavery was ending, everyone was thinking like, oh, America's a free country, everything's going fine. So then, even though there were still a bunch of like things, as Alan said, about like Reconstruction failure, and like a bunch of slavery still, and hanging people, there was a ton of immigration into the country, and then especially that immigration came from Asia. So there were like it was primarily like Japanese and Chinese, but there was especially a large amount of Chinese. So what happened was they were trying to build a railroad across America at the same time called the Transcontinental Railroad. And then all these like Chinese people, they came here. They were willing to like work for very little money because they had no job, right? So then they started taking the jobs of the originally American workers, and then that made them like upset. So they like started like talking to the government, saying like, can you like kick these people out of here? They're taking our jobs. So then what happened was the government listened to them, and then they passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which essentially just like limited the immigration of Chinese laborers through a ban. And then it was super hard for like people, even like qualified people, to come into the United States. And like even people that had come here like a long time ago were still able to be sent back to China. So like yeah, that happened. And then there really wasn't anything that like the laborers could do about it. And then later on, so people thought that like slavery was improving. It wasn't that much of a thing anymore. But there was a court case called Plessy versus Ferguson. Basically what happened there was people were complaining about how they were being treated differently. The African Americans, they weren't happy. So then they went to court about the situation. And then in this court case, the Louisiana law ruled that they would allow like separate but equal places for white and colored races. But what happened was the government would provide more funding to like the white schools instead of like the black schools. And then they would like separate like facilities. But in almost every way, the facilities for the white Americans were always better. So in the end, it was essentially like kind of like a mini version of slavery all over again, where everyone was like still treated differently and being separated. Yeah. So then after that, more nearing around like the 1900 time, what happened was the USS Maine was sunk. And then what happened there was the people were saying that like, oh, it was sunk by the Spanish. There's this whole thing. The Spanish are terrible people. But they actually weren't sure if it was true. And then there's actually they found more reason to believe that it was actually just like a problem with the ship itself, or like a maneuver by like the US Army itself to like blow up the ship.
They were pretty sure that it was like something to do with the gunpowder storage being like
Yeah.
not properly managed or something.
Yeah. So then after that, however, like, reporters, they like to like kind of like essentially they make money off of how many like newspapers they sell. So they're trying to like make the headlines look as cool as possible. So then they started saying the Spanish sunk the ship, the Spanish are evil, they're our enemies, right? So that was called yellow journalism. It was especially popular during this time. And then pretty much everyone would read these newspaper articles, and so then like everyone believed that like, oh, it was because of Spain that like they sunk our ship, right? They killed our people, whatever. So then that started like the Spanish American War. And then essentially the US were able to get Spain to surrender. And then it ended in the Treaty of Paris, where Spain renounced its claim to Cuba. It gave Puerto Rico and Guam to the United States, and the United States purchased the Philippines too. So then now the United States started owning like a bunch of land in the Pacific Ocean, more closer to like where you guys are. And then USA became like known as more of like a global power because they were stretching all the way across the ocean.
Alright. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll just go ahead. So what do you guys think was the goal of the Reconstruction era?
Its goal was to bring the South back into the Union.
Alan, you want to say something about that, or
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just correct.
okay? And then what was one reason that the Reconstruction failed?
Because KUKLS clan attacked
You
Republicans.
can just call him the KKK.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's right. The Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK, they still continue to attack the people. So it essentially was like pretty useless.
Fun fact, the KKK still exists.
Not to the scale it was before, but yes.
Yeah.
And then third question, what is yellow journalism?
A type of journalism which includes eye-catching and exact headlines was popular during the time, potentially spreading misinformation.
Yeah. So that's right. Yellow journalism, they essentially just created like
Exaggerated the
really.
news.
Sorry, what'd you say, Vincent?
No, I was just gonna say exaggerated the news because I think that's
Yeah.
what he said. It just didn't say it clearly.
Yeah. So, and then finally, the last question. So give an example of like racial discrimination or like just racism in general, that was shown in the United States like during this time period. There's many different kinds. Anyone got an idea?
Can someone name an instance of racism in the United States? There's many, and there's still many today.
Can I?
Yeah, go
Sure,
ahead.
go ahead.
Lead to separate public facilities such as school, which were not very equal in quality.
Yeah, that's right.
correct.
Like the schools were separate, but like they were called separate but equal, but in reality they weren't equal at all. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on to our final topic of the day for math, which is math, and we're going to be going over some common formulas and concepts in math. Leo, start us off.
All right, so our first topic is going to be factorials. So the
Also, turn on
factorial
your
of a
camera,
number,
bro.
huh?
Turn on your
Oh,
camera, bro.
it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
That's
So-
some cap I hear right now, bro.
So the factorial of a number is the multiplication of all the numbers between 1 and the number itself. So yeah, it is denoted by the exclamation mark. So here's the formula, as you can see, n factorial equals n times n minus 1 times and so on and so forth, and then times 1 at the end. All right, and next we have the quadratic equation. So the quadratic equation or formula is often used to find the value x in a polynomial equation. And x usually has two values, so that's why you see a plus or minus sign in the formula. So if you look to the right, we have our quadratic here. It's in the form of a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then if you look below that, we have the formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Yeah, so this is an important formula to remember as well. And then last, we have the Heron's formula, which can basically find the area of a triangle in terms of the lengths of its sides. So as you can see, the formula is the square root of s times s minus a times s minus b times s minus c. So a, b, and c in this case would obviously just be the sides of the triangle. And then s is just half the perimeter, or otherwise known as a semi-perimeter. So a plus b plus c would give you the perimeter of the triangle, and you divide it by 2 to get half of it.
So here's the first question for you guys. If we have an equation 3x equals 9x squared minus 10, what would you get for, what would x equal? And then the quadratic formula is supplied right there. Tip, you need to rearrange the equation. Once you solved it, feel free to say it out loud or type it in the chat.
Feel free to ask for help too if you like get stuck on it, or do you need like any more explanation. You can just speak out or type in the chat.
Does anyone have an answer yet?
So do you guys need more time, or you need some like hints? Feel free to like raise your hand or react, like thumb up if you are doing good, so we know like what we can do. Have you guys learned about like this kind of equation in school?
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. I'll be
but
sure.
we have not learned quadratic formula.
Oh, you learned this before, right? Are you like trying to solve the problem right now?
Yes.
Okay. So do everyone else need more time then? We can give like 1 to 2 more minutes and then check.
Does anybody have an answer yet? No? Okay. Please try to finish soon though.
I think Bishal put the answer in the chat, the one that he got.
1.22 something. Okay. Since this took everyone a while, we're just gonna go to the solution and see if Vishal is correct.
The answer is 1 plus minus root over 41 by 6.
So Vishal got a decimal point, and Leo, could you plug this? Leo, can you plug this into the calculator to see if it's correct?
No, he's correct. I'm pretty sure. He said it. He said the
He
answer
just said
without.
the equation. It's right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, yeah, okay. So congratulations, Vishal, you got the question correct. And then we have one more question for you guys. This one's a Heron formula question. So you have to use the Heron's formula to find the area of the triangle, and we've given you the 3 sides. And again, once you
The
finish, feel
answer
free to
is
type.
root over 300.
Answer is what? Sorry, I was talking.
Root over 300.
Root of 3 over what?
Root over 300.
Root over 300.
That's right.
Okay. So Charles has confirmed that's correct. So good job, Vishal. Probably the best math skills here in this class, at least. Because no one else answered the questions. So yeah, Vishal, thank you for participating, Vishal. And thank you all to everyone else who has participated. Yeah, we encourage participation here because it really helps you practice your English skills, which is kind of what you're here for. And yeah, thank you all for coming. here's the Google form for feedback. You guys can fill it out in your free time and give us some feedback on what you would like us to teach next week and anything we can improve on.